Well, here we are, folks. It's time this year to engage in the Nacet blade that is well known by many. And some of you guys have been around since the beginning. Thank you so much. That would have been maybe 2017 or 18, I think. Got it in my information somewhere. But we are going to do Austere August, and I'm going to shave every day of the month with the same gear. Even the same blade, which has been used 575 times prior to right now. When I first started using the blade, I had never taken one even past 30. And I used it actually for Austere August of that, whatever year that was. And I started to get halfway through the month and I realized, well, this is going really well. I got to the end of the 31 days of August and I thought, wow, this is really going well. So I just kept using it and I haven't stopped. Now, obviously it's not been consecutive, but I keep coming back. And no, I'm not stropping it on even my skin or on blue jeans or using any kind of old blade, sharpener from antiquity. This is the original white sleeve that I used for a couple of years to track my progress. And in the beginning, I started putting dots on the front face of it, but as you can see, I kind of had to add more dots in other places, and there's a total number of 300 dots on this little wrapper. I don't keep the blade in there anymore. I don't want the wrapper to fold too many times and break, and so I created this index card years ago. And here's the 300 to remind me that there's 300 dots on the wrapper. And then these are ones that I've completed after that. So 300, 400, 500, 75 is what we are. And then I just put the paper in here and I keep it in a little book-like thing to preserve everything. And I put the blade in here as well. But I do leave it out during the shaves. I do gently tap the blade dry, usually after every shave, but that's all I do to the blade. I don't condition the edge at all. At about use number 226, I dropped the head of the razor that I was using at the time, and it bent the end. And so I've continued to shave with it after that. I did bend it back with some pliers a little bit, but not, I didn't want it to break. And so, see, when I put it in the light, you can see the reflection of that bend right there. And I can feel it. I can feel which side has the bend. But, and it does feel a little more aggressive, but, it's also a curiosity, because when Greg takes a look at it, looks at this with his microscope, what's he going to see on that bend? That could teach us something. I did have to wipe the blade off. I hadn't used it in a year, I guess, and so it had gotten some schmutz. Maybe it was soap left over from the last shave. I'm not really sure. Just to kind of help you guys to know that I'm using the same blade, even when I started, I put Sharpie dots on it. Originally, there was a Sharpie dot here, maybe a couple of them, and then I saw those start to wear off. And then I put one or two Sharpie dots over here. You can still see the remnant of an old Sharpie dot right in that area. But then once I realized those dots were fading, I bought an etcher. And so I etched an N up here for Nacet. Yep. And then below there is a 1 below the slot. And you can see that if I had to etch it very lightly so that it didn't dent the blade and cause it to warp in some way. But if I move it, you should be able to see that. And so I'll show that to you every time I use the blade, and then you know it's the same one. Also of curiosity, I have used this only on one side, except for one time when I made a mistake. The side that I've used it on is one where, since I'm usually using 3-piece razors, I put the N1 there and the dots facing up, so that if I were to take my razor apart and show it to you guys, then you guys would see, like this is what I've done in the past. You guys could identify the blade, and also and then that helps me know which side that it should be on. And that's a point of curiosity as well. And that may actually be my biggest puzzle, biggest question that I want to have answered is, what is the condition of this edge in terms of the angles? Because I've only used it on one side so many times. And what if Greg looks at it and it's still symmetrical, like it hasn't worn down in a certain direction? You know, that would be very interesting to see. And this also, the fact that I can use this blade 575 times, kind of tells you that most people don't really need to fuss about flipping a blade in any sort of pattern that's predictable. I mean, if it does work for you, then great, but especially if you're a new shaver and you're doing it because somebody else does it, don't worry about it. In general, I do flip my blades. I just put them in the razor randomly, and so odds are they're getting 50-50 use as we're working with them. So that is kind of the star of the show. Now let's take a look at the other members. The Taj handle here of the Semogue Owners Club. It's a boar brush. It has received a good many hairdryer treatments to help the tips to split. I used last year the Sterling More Boar brush and enjoyed it very much. I hadn't put in too many uses on it. I'm trying to get a lot of uses in this brush so that I can get to that just ultra luxury stage of a boar brush. And I've got so many brushes in my collection, though it's kind of slow to do, and so that's why sometimes I like to take a dedicated run like this to really put some miles on it. Excuse me. The past years have had a side challenge during Austere August where we use a reprehensible soap scent. I will also be using the Splash for Midnight Stag from Chiseled Face, and I also have the cologne. And as you can see, it may be about time to buy more of that. It displeases most members of my family greatly. It is divisive because scent notes like leather, gasoline, smoke, and wood are not as palatable to other people. Even many shavers out there who are in this hobby and have large collections don't like this soap because it's just very strong. It reminds me of the Anchorman movie where they bring out, Sex Panther, and the guy puts it on as a cologne and walks out, and people are just impacted by it. It's kind of the closest thing. It resembles that a little bit. One time, I definitely had my, members of my family say, "What did you use?" That sort of thing. It's just not them, but it is me. I like the scent a lot. Stephen Joyner liked the scent of Dogwood Handcrafts fame, and he's the one that created the side contest for Austere August to use this scent the whole way through, and I've been doing that pretty much every time. All right, we get a little extra flair on our wet shaving subreddit every time we complete the challenge. So here we go. Let's do it. We are going to just do a standard type lather in a bowl today. As you can see, this with its flattened down soap has been used quite a bit. And let me make sure I don't knock things over, hopefully. All right. Get my 3D printed lather bowl that I use so much. Love it, from Roger Quintero. And I showed you the blade. The blade's loaded in the razor. I don't need to try to keep dry hands anymore. All right. A lot of water in it, as you can see. Give it a good shake and bring it down to a lightly wet brush. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That was 30 swirls. And I used to count swirls when I was doing the slurry lather method that I kind of put together. You know what? I have, since I haven't used this in a year. Let's do 50 swirls instead. Not a lot of, you know, kind of early lather has developed, but you know what? Let's just see if it'll be enough. I can always dip back in the tub if I need to. And now let's get a little water on my face. I just bought a house recently, and I haven't moved very much stuff over, and so that's what this weekend is going to all be about. And so I'm using the same shirt as I wore yesterday. Okay, now this is an old school base here. This is the Chiseled Face Tallow. It is a tallow soap. Does it have as the third ingredient, it's got potassium cocoate, and that may be coconut oil. A lot of times the coconut oil soaps will kind of posture up like this in a dry, bubbly kind of way. You almost have to push it down, try to keep it under control. Now, with just the water from the brush that was left in there, see, already we have it's a very light lather, but it's starting to get that structure. It's very firm and kind of rigid. I mean, relatively speaking, you know, you can see those little pointy tips there. And so you could say this is very dry lather, and that's okay. If you want to shortcut things, you can start with a little bit more water in your brush. But this way, by shaking most of it out, I have some consistency, and then I can give a very noticeable measurement of how much water I'm adding, and that becomes of value to people who might be trying to recreate this lather, or who are learning, or just for some reason have not gotten their lathers to act right. And so by trying to limit the number of unknown variables, I'm hoping to help them. So we've just added some water there, maybe 10 milliliters, who knows, and we're already seeing a big change in the body of the lather. This is one that's not quite as nice as like the sterling beef tallow lather, or many of the higher performance lathers today, but it does get the job done, and it's probably inexpensive for them to make because they're still doing it. Chiseled Face. I may not think their soap base is, you know, a super strong contender. However, I love their scents. They are just really giving me and the shaving community a lot of wonderful manly scents that we can enjoy. sometimes very creative ones that other people aren't doing. Sherlock is another one that I like from Chiseled Face in terms of the scent. On the last shave, I was using Rich Mousse, the Mutton Tallow Special Base. And I was trying to remember one of the scents that it smelled like, and it was the Sharp Dressed Man from Sterling. And that's a Creed fragrance dupe, but it had some similarities. Kind of that freshness, green, you know, kind of nature to it. Green Irish Tweed is the Creed scent that is a classic one that the Sharp Dressed Man was based on. Now, because this is kind of that OG base, I do not take this as wet as I usually do with a top-notch base like the Sterling Mutton Tallow or the Beef Tallow. I can really push a lot of water in there and it will hold on to it and be lightly creamy the whole time. This one does not do that. And that's the reason I don't quite call it a high-performance base. It's just not as good, to me at least. I think where this base excels is face latherers who don't like to take a lot of time because it kind of gets you something slick early on. And for those face lathers, they also may not want to have a very wet lather. This kind of maybe runs better when it's dry than other soaps when they are dry, relatively speaking. So I need to remember not to take this too far. And so other soaps behave very differently when I do my lift test, you know, like this. I mean, there's no dripping. It's all, and it comes down in that big clod, and it didn't even change the shape of the bottom of the clod very much, because you can see how the whole clod is rocking back and forth a little bit. And look how much structure that tip has. So let's just try this. This will be a good experiment. Is this going to be too dry? I can always add a little bit more water in just a minute. But this soap base, if I do add too much water to it, it kind of breaks and it's not nearly as enjoyable. And so finding that fine line is very tricky with this soap base of being able to pump a lot of water into it to get the slickness that you want, but then not pumping as much as it takes to kind of render the lather not creamy, not lightly creamy. Kind of feels good going on the face. This kind of lather, since it's kind of so dry and thick, is going to make brushes that have more firm tips, or really any brush, feel softer than it really is. Let us add a little bit more water in terms of drips here to the brush. Well, boy, that 50 seconds of loading has got me lots of lather. How do I know I have so much in the brush right now and on my face? See how it's starting to get this border around my goatee of thick, you know, lather? That's how I can tell. And yeah, especially when I added that water to it, even those 2 sprinkles of water, it increased the volume of lather in the brush. And so that's how I know that this particular mix of lather could take a lot more water. That's good. But we'll of course see how the razor feels. Another tip, if it's a little bit dry, is to leave your face very wet after the rinses between passes. Sometimes that's the best way to add just a little bit of water to your lather, because if you add drips to your bowl, then you kind of have to mix for a while to make sure it's homogeneous. Oh, the scent, I miss it. I miss it so much. It's so nice to have it going on right now. All right, folks. Nacet. Shave number 576. And let's see. I think we can see the, yep, there's the glint of the bend right there. Let's start with the smooth side. Excuse me. My standard of when I will stop using this blade, and I guess I could just stop it because I want to at some point, but I really doubt that I will do that. But I flipped over. Now let's see if I feel the difference. Right now, no. I don't feel that. Usually the neck is usually where I will really be able to tell. And not a slick feeling here. So I definitely want to add more water next time. But it does get the job done. So as long as I'm not using a razor that's really aggressive for me, then this level of slickness is going to work. It's going to be doable. My skin may not feel quite as good afterwards. All right, so let's get a good rinse here. And why not add a little bit more water to the lather. So like I was starting to say, my standards are kind of the business world. Can I go into an average business, an average job, working like in an office? If it was a construction site, you know, a certain amount of stubble might be appropriate, you know. But in a standard office type work environment, would I be noticed in the workplace that I had not gotten a good shave? And that is my standard. If I ever get to that point, then I'll know that it's not performing up to par. I do usually have to do more passes than usual, but as you'll see, they go by so fast that I don't really think that they are causing an unnecessary or an improper delay in the shave. So so that standard was how I feel about the presentation. So it needs to look good, a decent level. Obviously, I'm not getting baby butt smooth level of closeness, but just a good shave is what I'm going for. Now, it needs to be a reasonable quality shave. Number two, it needs to be done in a reasonable amount of time. So yeah, I might be able to get everything shaved at 2,000 uses by, you know, doing 12 passes, but see, that's not really practical. And I'm not trying to set some impractical goal. I like to think, and I believe I've had reports back, what people saying that they've been able to go longer and have better shaves with their blades because of their watching what I'm doing and rethinking, maybe let's give this blade a few more uses. Every once in a while, you'll give a blade a few more uses after it's been uncomfortable maybe for a shave, and it snaps back and gives you a nice shave. And so sometimes it's very beneficial to keep shaving with a blade, even after maybe it tugs on you once or twice. SugarDaddyShaves.com is a website that I have that you can read about my marathon aspects. There's a page there called Marathon Blades that lists blades that have been taken by me or others past 100 shaves, and most of the big popular ones have been have done that. All right, pass number 2, cross grain. Even a lot of times you can listen to your blade and you can tell the wetness of your lather. If it sounds kind of dry and scrapey, then maybe add more water. I don't do against the grain, even when I'm not marathoning blades. My skin just doesn't like it, and that may be one of the big reasons why I'm able to keep using a blade. If I did against the grain, if I could under normal circumstances, I'm guessing I would have had to quit using this blade by now. But that's one of the reasons why one of my criteria is a reasonable shave. By what I'll do is multiple passes with cross grain. And I will go against the grain in an angular sense, just not fully against the grain. I can still feel stubble, as you would imagine. I am able to move fast with the razor because I've just shaved a lot. And so if you're new at this, take your time. It's one of those cases, and many things are like this. Let your muscles get in the right habits by going slow at first, and then the speed will just come naturally as your muscles get used to the light pressure that I'm maintaining, for instance. There's kind of like an angle up like that. Still wish it was a little more slick. Maybe tomorrow I will dip my razor blade here in alcohol just in case there are any bacteria from the past. And there we go. See, shaves are pretty quick. Passes are. And so that's why I don't mind doing 5 passes. This, when I take my really wet hands and put it on my face during the rinse process, this lather does feel very good. It feels very slick and luxurious, but that's only when I've got really wet hands. Now, as you can see, I think I've done 3 passes and I've got tons of lather, so I definitely didn't need to do 50 swirls. I'm using the Timeless Open Comb. Is that the 68? Yeah. The first time I tried this razor, it was so aggressive feeling for me. I tried it with a younger blade because, I just got the head in. I had enjoyed the 68 closed comb solid bar. I enjoyed it so much that I decided to try the open comb, and there was such a noticeable difference in the performance. The 68 solid bar or scalloped was very comfy, very mild on my skin, but cut very closely and was enjoyable. Then when I put the base plate for the open comb version on it, I noticed it immediately how more aggressive it was. When you're shaving with an older blade, it also helps you to learn your technique. Number one, you're trying to have good technique, like a light touch and the proper angle. to make the shave go well and to make the blade last longer. But when you are trying to get those hairs in the 4th pass and 5th pass, that kind of thing, with a blade that's not quite as super edgy as it was maybe in the first 5 uses, then you really have to get your angles right. It's a little bit more picky. A little water on my face. Oh, that smells so good. That's just so nice. Pretty much every shave that I've done in this marathon here with the Nacet is on YouTube. I have a Blade Marathons channel, and mostly it's this particular blade. And so what the thought track I was going when I was talking about this razor being quite aggressive, when I first tried it, as you can know by the number of times I've used this particular razor, maybe it's been the one for the last 200 shaves. It just matches the edge profile of this blade at this age right now better than any of the other razors I have. In the early days, I was switching. I started out with very mild razors. I could use the Nacet. It's a great blade for me normally, and I can use it in pretty much any razor I want. I really enjoy doing that. But then if it would start to not feel great after a certain time in a razor, I would switch to a different one, and I was able to use more aggressive razors than I normally would like. And I mean, who knows? I may not be able to have gone this far if I didn't find a razor that worked with the Nacet blade. So visually, does it look like I need a shave? No, it doesn't. Just for fun and because I like the scent, let's do another pass. And I've still got tons of lather in there. So I can start reducing the swirls, and as you leave a little bit of water in the soaps, on the soap surface, you will continue to reduce your number of swirls. So this was just kind of a standard bowl lather. I like to load with a slightly wet brush, sometimes if you have a lot of water in your brush, it can slow down the loading of the soap. If you only have, if you don't have enough water in the brush, it can have kind of the same effect. Because a little bit of water is needed to kind of mix the surface of the soap up into something that the brush can grab. Larger degree of an angle here in terms of the kind of the slide motion. I can do that now. But no tugging, anything like that. Greg, of course, I mentioned him a bunch of times because he's kind of a technical guy like me, and is interested in the kind of the nerdy aspects of shaving in terms of the angles used, the condition of the edge after a certain amount of time. And one of the things that he has said recently as we've talked about this blade is that it may actually keep going at this stage right now for a very long time. When you have an apex that's very sharp on the edge of the blade there, then it's giving you great performance. Okay, but let's say that edge starts to dull and it becomes more of a curve than a point. At the microscopic level, it's a curve. Well, as long as it's a very small curve, it can still be quite a sharp blade. But then that will degrade over time, and eventually it'll get to a point where, pun unintended at the moment, it'll get to a stage where it's dulled enough to where if it's still giving you good shaves, but it's dulled enough to where it's not a fragile edge anymore. It's an edge that may be strong for a long time. I mean, I know you guys, if you've been around certain pieces of metal that have been stamped or something, or have been just really polished well, and it's just a 90-degree corner. You can, I mean, maybe you can't cut yourself on it, but you can kind of feel an edginess there because that edge is just strong. And so maybe I've got an edge on the end of my blade by now that's worn down enough to where it's whatever it's doing at the moment in terms of the closeness you can get and your performance, it's going to do it for a really long time. And I think that's a very valid point. I had not thought about that before Greg brought it up. Let us now get a good a good rinse, and just take an inspection on my face. We are good, folks. I have another few passes of lather in the bowl so I can reduce. Look at that. That's enough for 3 or 4 passes. A little bit that's in the bowl plus what's right here, no problem. And now, let us whip out the aftershave. It does have menthol. I don't like menthol normally. I've kind of gotten used to it with the Midnight Stag. It burns me more than cools me. And it also gets in the way in terms of a scent that I want to enjoy as much as I can. I have to wait for that menthol to kind of burn off. And so in that sense, I like the cologne a lot better than the aftershave. Speaking of which, Midnight Stag cologne. My roommate lately is, for the past 3 years now, a great guy, and be interesting to see if this month he makes any remarks about the scent. I know that my family notices and they don't like it. But let's see if another guy has an issue with it. Probably, because I don't know that he wears too many colognes and stuff. So, we'll see. There we go. That's the shave. Thanks so much for watching. This is Sugar Daddy Shaves. That was use number 576 of the Nacet. And I look forward to being with you guys all month. And looking forward to reading your comments. Take care now. Good night.